Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hi, Lisa K. Donner here from Liberty Nation, and our discussion today for the LN Roundtable is the Immigration Caravan. Joining me today are Legal Affairs Editor Scott Cosenza, the newest member of the LN Tribe, Martin Walsh. Welcome, Martin. And political correspondent Sarah Cowgill. Welcome, one and all.
Hi, Lisa.
So, a virtual army of human beings are headed for a likely showdown at the U.S.-Mexican border. This is an annual trek, as most political observers have noticed, but this year, maybe it's the midterms, I'm not sure, but there does seem to be a particularly large group heading our way. It was about 5,000, then it moved to 7,000. Some are now saying it's 10,000. And they're coming from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Mexican police and military are completely outnumbered, but President Trump says he's alerted the Border Patrol and the military, and he's basically not letting them in.
I think that probably the perception amongst these people is that we will not visit violence upon them, that the worst that would happen is they would be escorted to a detention camp or something like that, but not that they would, be torn up by bullets. So I don't think that's an effective threat, Sarah, just because I don't think that they would believe that we would use it. And I would hope that would be true, by the way.
Oh, I don't think I just think it's parking the dog in the yard. It's going to deter people from wanting to illegally enter this country. Mm-hmm. Now, where they go, I hope they don't even make it to our border.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a stark contrast between President Trump's approach and what President Obama wanted to do. And some circulating now is this video from 2005, where Obama previously said that you can't just come into our country. You can't pour through our border at will. And I think what President Trump and the administration are really showing now is that we will defend the border. We will send troops. We will do what we have to do, because if we're not defending the border, we're not a nation. You can come here legally. That's fine. That's often encouraged. But I think there's a big difference, as you guys noted. There's 7, 8, maybe even 10,000 people storming to the border demanding entry. I mean, that really sounds like an invasion to a lot of people.
Okay, what I'm wondering is how many of these people are Soros funded? I mean, this just doesn't look like a regular group of refugees to me.
I read an interesting piece yesterday in the Post, Lisa, and it talked about the origins of the march and how people got the word and that sort of thing. And I was looking to see, because I too have been very curious about the logistics involved and the payments. Mike Pence said, I think it was last night on Fox, that Venezuelan money, which means Chinese or Russian money, because the Venezuelans have no money, has paid for it. So I've been curious about that as well. And what I took from the piece, and I thought that was pretty interesting, was for a fair number of the people, perhaps we don't appreciate how treacherous it is to go from El Salvador to the United States if you're an illegal immigrant. And they see it as, hey, this is a very safe and low cost way for me to do something I may have done otherwise, which is to say, try to attempt to enter the United States illegally, but it would maybe through the use of a coyote with lots of money and lots of risk. And whereas this, and it just made a lot of sense to me, whereas like what would make a lot of these people kind of at almost a moment's notice sort of jump on the bandwagon, they're presumably not that ideologically motivated, but that does seem like a very plausible motivation, safety and low cost.
I guess my question is, if we let these people in, what's to stop all of Guatemala, all of El Salvador, Nicaragua, etc., from just emptying out? I mean, why not just bring them all?
It's exactly what
I think
it is.
that's really
it's not a precedent that anybody that wants to throw a hissy fit and stomp their way into America can do it. And I think it's a dangerous precedent we're setting with these people.
Okay, Martin, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think exactly what Sarah said before too, as well, is it's really important to kind of set the standard early, that you can come here legally, you can use legal channels, but you're not just going to form a massive mob and come to the border and demand that we let you in. I think there's a very big difference. And I think the president's definitely trying to send a message early that it's not going to be tolerated, because if we let 10,000 in, 50,000 could come right behind it.
Okay,
Well,
now
I can tell you one thing, Lisa. If they would be waving the dang American flag instead of the Honduras or the Guatemalan or any other flag and demanding to come into our country, I might even have a little heart melting over that one if they're waving their little American flags. But no, they're not. They're demanding entrance into a country that they don't belong to, and they need to stay home.
right, and they're chanting "down with Trump" and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Now, managing editor Mark Angelides wrote a piece that basically said, and I questioned him on this. He seemed to say that our laws indicate that we sort of have to let these people in. Scott, you're our legal affairs editor. Is that true?
The law requires that if somebody presents themselves at our border and says, I require refugee status due to X, Y, or Z, that they are entitled to due process for that application. That doesn't mean that we have to let them in and stay, but their application may be processed or must be processed according to law, which is one of the reasons why during the last time this happened, I can't remember when it was, but it seems like it was not that long ago. We had one of these caravans. They were going to refuse to present themselves at an actual checkpoint. And the administration's response was, well, that's where you have to go because you claim you're a refugee. We have a process in place. There are laws and regulations in place that, mandate certain, functions on how we process this. And those are at the checkpoints and the border crossings. They're not at some guy's farm in West Texas, So in any case, there are rights that they have, and I presume the administration will be honoring them. We know that there's going to be a million ACLU lawyers standing around watching, so I suspect they'll be honored scrupulously.
Okay, let me go around the horn, starting with you, Sarah. Who's for letting them in?
I'm not sure. It seems like everybody's hateful about this. Heck, I saw a whole huge news feed on one of the Chicago substations about where the Democrats were saying Trump is the one funding this, trying to bring him to the border so he can shoot him. I don't know. I don't know who benefits from this. All I know is the American people don't benefit. Maybe the Democrats would, maybe the Republicans will politically, but as a person in this country, it's not going to help me or you or anyone else out letting 10,000 so-called refugees into our country.
Martin.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think politically it probably favors Republicans a little bit more just because immigration is such a hot topic for the midterms. But I think as a country, what's best for the country, I don't know that you can make a good argument that letting 10, 12,000 people in at a time is a great thing, because if they get here, then what? Who's housing them? Where do they go? How much taxpayer funds are used? And then what might happen next if more caravans continue to come? I think it could really create a very big problem long term.
Okay, now, Scott, I'm going to call you out a little bit. You're a big-time libertarian, and you are an open borders guy. What say you about this caravan?
Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
Okay, Emily.
Yeah, let them ask to come in and not come in here demanding that they get everything that every American citizen should have because of being here.
Photos of the marchers with the Honduran flags, I was perplexed and troubled by that, Sarah. So I don't have a monotone response to it, but at the same time, I recognize that. I mean this seriously. That maybe have been a plant. In other words, that could have been a Breitbart guy trying to, I'm sure that got a lot of clicks, that story. So there's lots of people there who were born through no fault of their own into basically a failed state. And I think if
somebody needs to hand them an American flag and let them chant USA.
Sure.
Okay.
I think there were someone burning an American flag from, granted, it probably was a select few people, but, those are the images that tend to come out.
Okay, I'd just like to say that I don't think Trump should stop the caravan until Election Day, because I think this kind of thing is going to bring GOP voters out in droves. Mm-hmm. All right, final word on the caravan. We're going to start with you, Scott. Go.
It's not an easy answer. There,
Yes,
I think
it
that the best,
is.
I think that if we didn't have this massive welfare state, it wouldn't be a problem. And so the answer then is to not restrict and limit the hopes and dreams of people who do want to breathe free, at least some portion of them, and instead eliminate the giveaways and the putting our hand in our neighbor's pocket to pay the other person. And then we can all be free rather than have some socialism and borders. Let's have no socialism and open borders.
That's not what they want, Scott.
That's what I
Exactly.
They want one giant Americas that the United States funds. That's not.
If we dial back on the welfare programs, on the welfare state significantly, then the only ones who will come will be the ones who want
Okay,
to
but
and are
that's
willing
not
to work
where
and
we
succeed.
are now.
I agree. That's not
that's
where
the
we are.
reality.
Two
Okay.
wrongs don't make it right. And it's wrong to tell somebody, I think it's wrong to tell somebody who wants to come here for a better life that they can't come because they're poor and they're not a tech person from India,
Scott, we
which is
cannot
what we say now.
afford it. Martin, go.
And stop paying for it.
Martin.
I think your last line, Lisa, is perfect. I think on one hand, we can feel sorry that people may, be born into a bad situation. They may have hardships, but the fact of the matter is they should probably put more of that time and effort into fixing their own countries. We cannot take in 8, 10, 12,000 people at a time. I just don't think it's feasible. And I think immigration is a very hot button issue right now. And I think it really, not to make everything political, but I think with the midterms in 2 weeks, this is just a hot rod for the GOP. And I think the Kavanaugh smear tactics really drove a lot of voters. I think this is probably going to be another really big kick to get people to the polls for sure.
Sarah.
Well, I don't want him here. I want him here legally. I don't care if they're going to wash clothes or if they're going to run Google. I don't care. I want them to do it legally. Now, if you can get 15,000 people to march that far to run our border over, why can't they just march and overthrow their own government? For goodness sake, give me a break here.
And I will take the last word this week, and that is America cannot save the world. Thank you very
Amen.
much, Scott Cosenza, Martin Walsh, and Sarah Cowgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, and you've been watching Liberty Nation's LN Roundtable. Thanks so much for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Visit us at libertynation.com.